Matt Powell, Kent Hoving, Ray Comfort, all fellows that many non-believers scoff at when they make claims that there's a God, or that they hate Marvel. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Powell. But did you know that there are more of them? Specifically, the Hovings. SpongeBob whacking theist Kent Hoving has a son called Eric.
A boy ape stands up and he's like, I ain't gonna be an ape no more. A girl ape stands up and she's like, me neither.
And in this video, he's going to blow our minds. Hello, I'm the Skeptic. I watch videos on YouTube that make extraordinary claims, whether that's flat earth or strange conspiracies, but mostly the claim that a God is real, and then explain why I can't accept their position. Before we get into today's video, please do subscribe, hit that bell notification to be alerted for my next video, and drop a like. That would be superb. In this God Squad video, Kent Hoving's son, Eric, has something that will blow an atheist's mind. At this point, the only thing that will blow my mind is Eric convincing his dad his position of asserting a God that he hasn't actually demonstrated isn't the right way to be. But I doubt that's going to be what happens here.
I love talking to skeptics. I truly love them and love engaging with them. So I read a lot of skeptical information from skeptics and things like that. I think of Brad Pitt. Now, I'm not sure where he's at now, but a couple years ago, he said, I'm probably 20% atheist, 80% agnostic. I don't think anyone really knows. You'll either find out or not when you get there. Until then, there's no point in thinking about it. And I go, I don't know. That sounds like a really bad way to go. Say, don't even think about it. You'll find out when you get there. It's like, because if Christianity is true, then right now, this life, you listening to me, this is your opportunity to find out what's true and what's not true.
Well, diving right in there, Brad Pitt kind of alluding to the atheist wager, which is a fun and probably not so serious spin on Pascal's wager, where Blaise Pascal suggests it's better to believe in a God, and if there isn't one, you've lost nothing. Well, sorry, Blaise, many of us non-believers disagree. What if you worship the wrong God and you spent all that time doing things in the name of the wrong deity? At least with the atheist wager, you live a good life and you do good things, and if there was an afterlife and a floaty sky man governing it, it wouldn't be mad at you because it didn't give you good enough reason to believe in it and you still weren't an awful human.
This is the time when you make the decisions for where you're going to end up in the next life.
Though you'd have to demonstrate there even was a next life. If there's no reason to think that there is an afterlife, there's no reason to do the things that might get you there. Instead, it's better to do good things to make the time you know you definitely have that much better.
George Clooney said, I don't believe in heaven and hell. I don't believe in God. All I know is that as an individual, I won't allow this life, the only thing I know to exist, to be wasted. I read that and I go, oh, it just kind of saddens me because once again, I appreciate that he doesn't want this life to be wasted. But to deny the reality of God is foolishness.
To deny something that's never been demonstrated is foolishness. How? Would it be foolish of you to not accept the claim that there's a fully functional lightsaber in my backpack without me demonstrating it in any way? No. An extraordinary claim like that would require extraordinary evidence. But since we're here to have our minds blown, I'm ready to find out why it's foolish.
You want to deny evolution and live in your world that's completely inconsistent with everything we observe in the universe, that's fine. He said, but don't make your kids do it because we need them. We need scientifically literate voters and taxpayers for the future. We need engineers that can build stuff and solve problems. Now, when I read this, I can't help but think of the logic of his comments here. And I want to look at the history of science here in just a minute.
Maybe, just maybe, you can't help but want to question it because everything he said goes against the floaty sky man you still haven't demonstrated. Blow my mind, Eric, please.
I mean, to say that you got to have people that believe in evolution because otherwise you can't build stuff, you can't solve problems.
Maybe you need to clear your ears out, Eric, or at least open your mind. He said scientifically literate, not evolution. Is this the problem? Do the Hovings just hear the word science and immediately think it's evolution? Science isn't just about evolution, Eric.
I cannot understand him.
That's incredibly absurd.
Isn't it just?
That's a real slap in the face to every engineer, every architect, every designer that believes in the authority of the Word of God, that believes in the deity of Christ, and rejects the evolution worldview based on science and based on Scripture.
Engineers and architects use an evolutionary worldview to design and build things. Maybe my mind will be blown, but for the wrong reasons, Eric. How does believing in a God make an architect design buildings better? How does believing in a deity make an engineer better at engineering? Does using scientific, and by scientific, I don't just mean evolution, does using scientific methods, however, make doing those things easier? And rejecting science because a book that has never been demonstrated to be the word of a God tells you to, well, that's silly.
I mean, do you check the bridges that you drive over to find out if they were built by a creationist or an evolutionist?
Take a shot every time Eric misuses the context for the word evolutionist. In fact, don't. I don't want you to get drunk before the end of the video.
It's irrelevant, isn't it? Because science is science. The late Christopher Hitchens said, the duel between Christianity and atheism is the most important in the world. And there really is, we realize this, there really is a battle taking place. The real battle is not just an intellectual battle. The real battle is for the heart of mankind, for the souls of people.
Battling for something that hasn't been demonstrated? How about this? I'll challenge you to a duel, Eric, for the ownership of all the rainbow giraffe waste at the end of my garden. I imagined the waste into existence, and Lisa the rainbow giraffe made it clear to me through signs that I interpreted a certain way that she no longer wants that waste, and it's mine to do with what I want. So if you want it, come and duel me. Which is about the same as battling to save someone's soul.
Now the Bible tells us in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15, that you and I are to be ready to give an answer.
Please, no. Not the Bible. Blowing my mind won't ever involve the Bible.
That's where we get the word apologetics, to give a defense of the faith. Be ready always to give an answer. In the Greek language, to give an answer, that phrase right there is the Greek word apologia. And that's where we get the word apologetics from.
Life just made way more sense.
Give an answer to every man that asketh you of the reason of the hope that's in you with meekness and fear. You and I are commanded to be able to give an answer to everybody. Everybody. Now, you may think, like I used to think, well, if I'm not a biologist, I can't answer the biologist. And if I'm not an astrophysicist, I can't answer the astrophysicist. Now, you got to realize, God is calling us to answer everybody.
Even if that answer is just random word salad that makes zero sense. And don't lump me in that, Eric. I care about what's true, not what I can imagine into filling the gaps. I definitely wouldn't want to tell someone who has studied a science for decades that they're wrong because my book doesn't agree with it. How ludicrous.
To be able to give an answer for the reason of the hope that's in you. What is the reason of the hope? Why do you have hope when others have no hope?
What does that have to do with anything? I hope you get to blowing my mind soon.
When you really come down to the end of life and everything is meaningless, everything means nothing.
Do you need me to fill your glass up, Eric? This half-empty approach is depressing. If your life was meaningless after you die, that's your fault for not doing better. I hope that, just before I pop my clogs, I can say to whoever is around me, yep, I'm pleased with what I achieved. Now, family, do the best you can and make good choices. Easy. I still don't need a God for that. Then Eric goes on to say that he went onto a talk show with Tom Hartman, who suggested that teaching creation is borderline child abuse.
That's quite the claim. He said, Eric, welcome to the program. And I'm sitting there thinking, wait a minute. I teach creation. He's claiming that teaching creation is going to kneecap our children in science and that it's borderline child. He's accusing me of being a child abuser. Now, Paul, I don't think you, but I know many other atheists would say, yeah, that's child abuse. And when I went on his program, I had to stop and I had to say, Tom, listen, I'm really confused by what you're saying here, because teaching children that there is a God, that they're going to be held accountable to, that they are incredibly designed, look around, and there is right and there is wrong, that's not child abuse.
Well, Actually, let's just stop this supposed mind-blowing for just a second. Teaching kids things you can't actually demonstrate isn't the best now, is it? You're teaching kids that believing in something without actual testable and repeatable evidence is a good way to approach life. Bad beliefs can lead to bad behaviours. Is it better to teach what is right or what you hope is right? If you do bad, you will spend eternity being tortured. If you do good, and by good I mean the things that are described as good in a book that also hasn't been demonstrated to be the word of any god, if you do good, you may live forever. I'm one of the fortunate ones that was never really taught that there was a hell, so I couldn't do justice to this point. But I have many atheist creator friends who believe that what they were taught when they were younger was mental abuse.
However, telling boys and girls, hey, there is no God, there are no moral absolutes, you can do whatever you want, and then turning around and punishing that child when they do something wrong, that is emotional and psychological child abuse.
I would not want to be a child in the Hoving house. I'm only a step-parent, but in our house, we don't say there is no God. We say we're not convinced. We teach asking questions and finding answers and saying, I don't know when needed. If mistakes are made, we discuss why these things aren't beneficial to the household or to the well-being of ourselves and the rest of humanity, and then come up with ways to do better. Please tell me where there's child abuse there, Eric. Let's skip ahead to the mind-blowing bit, shall we?
You're looking at the same world I'm looking at. We're all looking at the same rocks, the same strata formations. We're all looking at the same world. We're looking at the same DNA. We're looking at the same, things going on, the same history of the world. We're all looking at the same evidence.
Only some folks spend years and years of their life working to understand the intricacies, then sharing what they found after spending so much time trying to refute it. And others make massively incorrect assumptions because of something that has never been demonstrated written in a book.
We bring in evidences for the Bible, and I'm all for these amazing evidences of the Bible. We could talk about fulfilled prophecy. How things written thousands of years before they happened actually came true.
If this is the mind-blowing part, I'm more than a little disappointed. Point to one and demonstrate it. It's so much less impressive if a book that I write today says, I'm going to take my dog for a walk, and then 3 days later I remember what I wrote in the book and make it happen. That's not a prophecy coming true. That's me doing something that's written down.
Things that are not self-fulfilling in their prophecies, Jesus couldn't have said, I got an idea. I'm going to be born in Bethlehem just to fulfill the prophecy of being born in the house of bread, the Bethlehem, which means house of bread.
How is that a prophecy? Children have been birthed into existence for millions of years. A child being born in a place isn't exciting either. And even if it was specific that the child would be called Jesus, who's to say the parents of a child hadn't heard a story and gone, I like that name. Maybe we could call our kid that. Nothing about this is spectacular, Eric. My mind has never been less blown. He then goes down his list of evidence for the Bible, which has been discussed so many times, my brain might actually implode. I actually could do with an exploding brain to undo all this damage. Then he gets to a point where he says this absolute belter.
It's not like they've got more evidence against God than we have for God. Probably one of the greatest evidences that they use, I'm not going to go into this in detail, but one of the greatest things they think they use is evil and suffering.
Probably one of the things they use is evil and suffering. Instead of assuming what non-believers would say, just ask, hey Eric, ask me.
Well, evil and suffering are evidence against God. I've got my evidence. Look at all the evil and suffering in the world.
I would just say I'm not convinced that there's a God. Evil and suffering in the world doesn't convince me either way. Sorry. Thanks for that, straw man, but I don't care what you're saying.
Stop and think about that.
Hey, Eric, maybe take your own advice sometimes.
What worldview can make sense of evil and suffering? I mean, does the Buddhist worldview make sense of that? No. According to Buddhism, it's karma. What goes around comes around. All those people that got hurt in the earthquake or the tsunami, they had it coming because of something they did in a past life. You can't take Hinduism. Hinduism says, it's not really happening. You need to just meditate. You're not really suffering. You need to reach the state of nirvana where there's no distinctions and you realize this whole world is an illusion. I mean, does that do any good when you're standing by the bed of a child that's dying of cancer? I mean, is that what you say? Hey, it's just an illusion.
Or is it better to say, a God works in mysterious ways and allowed a kid to get cancer? I'm of the opinion that things happen, but with science, the human race is working to stop certain things from happening where possible. I see no problem with that, and my mind still isn't blown.
Do you adopt atheism? Atheism just says, suck it up, man. Life's tough. Yeah, you're a kid and you got cancer. Ha! Sorry, that's the way it goes.
Who says that? Does Eric just misrepresent everything? Atheism has nothing to do with accepting when kids get cancer. It's just about not believing in any God claims. However, as someone that does care about the human race, I would be empathetic to the child and their family and be thankful that we do have medicine and technology available thanks to the wonders of, you guessed it, Eric, evolution. Science.
You can't have empathy in an atheistic worldview because it's just the way it is.
Hey, you, Eric. Don't tell me what I can't do.
There's only one worldview that says, oh man, let me tell you the truth. God created a perfect world.
And then gave kids cancer. Shut up, Eric. You're embarrassing yourself now.
It was beautiful. No sin, no death, no suffering. But then man came in and destroyed God's perfect creation.
And if that God was real, that God apparently created humans in its own image, that clearly being destructive and murderous, and knew that humans would behave that way, because of omniscience and stuff, and did nothing to stop it, other than threat eternal torture. Sorry, Eric, my mind has never been less explosive than it has now, and I watched the 1968 Planet of the Apes.
Damn you! God! Damn you all to hell!
He then goes on to cite Encyclopedia Britannica, and I really think this is going to be the mind-blowing bit. I mean, we've waited long enough.
The current world population of 8 billion started approximately 4,400 years ago. Now, I think that's kind of interesting because, according to the Bible, there was a flood 4,400 years ago, and 8 people survived, and they would have repopulated the world. So I think it is kind of interesting. Now look at this from a secular perspective. In a secular textbook or in secular studies, they would show the human population. It would trace backwards into the past accurately, but then instead of tapering off to nothing, I don't know if you can read it. The screen's kind of small there. I'll show you what it says here. It says this is 4,000 BC. This is 5,000 BC, right here where it should taper off to nothing. 6,000 BC, 7,000 BC, 500,000 years ago. They just went from 7,000 to 500,000 and basically said, we maintained a tiny human population for hundreds of thousands of years. That's impossible. Even the Population Reference Bureau does something similar. They start off here and they go backwards to where it should taper off to nothing, somewhere right in here. And they go 5,000, 6,000, 7,000. 2 to 5 million years ago is what that says right there. 2 to 5 million years ago. Guys, you cannot maintain a tiny human population for millions of years. Genetically, that's impossible. Genetics show that cannot happen. You can't maintain a tiny human population for hundreds of thousands or millions of years. We should have reached this point way back in here. We would have had an exponential growth curve long before modern time, long before this last couple hundred years of Earth's history. At the time of Christ, there was only 250 million people alive. Encyclopedia Britannica actually did a study on this, and they said, let's just use the mathematics. And I won't read this, but I'll tell you basically what they said. If you want to pause screen and try to make that out, you can. Here's basically what they said. The current population growth rate, this was done a little after 2000, and the population growth rate was 1.7%. Today, the human population growth rate is 1.1%. So we've slowed down. It's actually getting to a dangerous level. It's not a good thing that we are not having enough children to repopulate and actually grow the human population. That's a whole other problem.
Is it? With almost 8 billion humans on Earth, I don't think we're going extinct anytime soon.
But when they did this study, it was at 1.7%. They said, let's just suppose that we start 1 million years ago with the first 2 humans.
Hang on, what? What 2 humans? There weren't two humans that were the first. There was a point in time that what we refer to as modern humans were different enough from their ancestors after thousands and possibly more generations of minor mutations, genetic inheritance, environmental impact, etc., to be their own species. And I know for sure I butchered that explanation. But sure, carry on.
A boy ape stands up and he's like, I ain't gonna be an ape no more. A girl ape stands up and she's like, me neither.
If that's really how you think it works, then congratulations. You really have blown my mind. My mind is blown at how ridiculous this whole thing is, and how you can't even grasp the absolute basics of evolution. At this point, I don't really care what else you have to say, Eric.
And the boy ape and the girl ape happen to be in the same area, in the same continent. They happen to find each other, and he thinks she's hot, and she's like, well, you'll do, okay? They're the first people. They stand up, first human beings. Well, they're going to have children, and they're going to multiply and replenish the earth. They're going to fill the earth. But the rate at which they fill the earth, instead of being what the annual population rate was at 1.7% or today 1.1%, instead of that rate, we're going to slow it down to 0.01%. So 170th of what it actually was when they did this study, or 100th of what it is today. Tiny human population growth rate. At this growth rate at 0.01%, you would double the number of people every 7,000 years.
But only half, let's just say half for now, of those people would be able to carry a child. The age of actually being able to conceive is only a percentage of that lifetime. Maybe not all of those would actually be able to carry to term. Perhaps not all of the children would survive. This is actually the most ridiculous argument ever. And even if it was how it worked, which I'm not saying it is, how would that prove a god? Okay, Eric, I'll give you one more shot at this. Blow my mind.
So if a million years ago, where's my million? If a million years ago, we had the first two people, after 7,000 years, you would go from 2 people to 4 people. After another 7,000 years, we've grown from 4 people to 8 people. Now, they're not the same people. They've lived and died, lived and died, lived and died. But the total human population has gone from 2 to now 4 to 8. 7,000 years later, we're at 8 times 2, 16. 7,000 years later, 16 times 2, 34. 7,000 years later, we go 8, 16, 32, 64 is what I meant to say. I said 34. 64, 128. You're going to double the human population every 7,000 years. At that incredibly slow human population growth rate, in 1 million years, you would double the human population 142 times. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, 142 times. That's not all the people that have ever lived. That's the people that are alive today in 1 million years. The number you would get when you do 2 times 2, 142 times, the number you would get is 10 to the 43rd power number of people on planet Earth in 1 million years at that incredibly slow growth rate.
Wow. It works with numbers, sure, but it's not the same when it comes to organic life, as there are thousands of other factors to take into account. I'm not equipped for this level of absurdity. Do you even understand what you're saying, Eric? Yeah, I didn't think so. He then goes on to say that because there aren't that many people alive today, it proves the Earth is only a few thousand years old. Yeah, I stand by my previous comment about having my mind blown for all the wrong reasons. I think we can leave Eric there before we all get too irritated. But you can see Eric's full video. The link is in the description. What extra things would you add to the conversation? Let me know in the section below. For now, I'm going to skeptic this off as not even remotely blowing my mind. A big thank you to this month's ticks on Patreon, MISM, Addy Rockart and the absolute lunatic Jimmy, as well as the base ticks. You can become a supporter on Patreon too at patreon.com/theskeptic. The link is in the description. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. From me, the Skeptic, stay safe, keep thinking logically and ask questions. Skepticism is the first step towards truth. See you next Saturday.